Panoramas or bird's eye view maps are amazing documents. The aerial view seems to draw us into the details on every street, inviting us to explore the map in 3D, testing our familiarity with the space. I think we can use some of these documents as sort of spatial text to augment research on landscapes, rural industry, agriculture, environment in the late 19th century when they were mostly written. Aerial views like this panorama of St. Thomas, drawn by H. Brosius in 1875, were meant to give a sort of three-dimensional view of the city. Now we can use programs like SketchUp to zoom into the map in more detail, to add data from other sources, and to model it in 3 dimensions. In this 3D scene of St. Thomas, we are going to add some air photos across topography. We will bring in models in 3D from SketchUp Warehouse that will fit with the landscape. We will also bring in 2-dimensional photos and show how to overlay those on the 3-dimensional landscape in a sort of history pin or rephotography format. And then we'll use those images and other images like the aerial photos to create models of various aspects of the landscape. How do you model a landscape that has essentially disappeared? Well, many historical geographers reconstruct past places by starting with what we know in the present and working backwards from there. The fire insurance plans did not cover the area that I was interested in here at the edge of town. I would usually then turn to historical aerial photographs. And we'll look at those here, but we'll see that we're kind of out of luck because the earliest photos of the valley show only the well-established athletic park and the growing suburbs. But the Elgin archives contained a wealth of earlier landscape photos of the valley, taken between 1865 and 1905, that showed the transformation of the park area and the floodplain and the dynamic kind of fluvial geomorphology of Kettle Creek. This area of the Kettle Creek River Valley is shown in the black hatched area on this scene animation that we're showing in SketchUp. And we know that this area changed dramatically. So what I wanted to do was add some aerial photos, like this one of 1960, northern St. Thomas, and this one of 1945. And as we can see, if we zoom in closer to the air photos, they're actually displaying in 3D. And I've brought in this model and adapted it to indicate what the Wabash or Great Western Railway Bridge would have looked like in the 3-dimensional landscape of the valley. And then panning around, we can see how the 1945 and 1960 aerial photos show that this has been an established park for most of the 20th century. It's called Athletic Park, along the St. George Street area. This photo shows that in the St. George area there was a mill, and that mill flooded most of the upper part of the valley. So if we pan around and take a look at the bridge and the athletic park, what we can do is compare it in a kind of rephotography way to earlier photographs like this one of the 1890 bridge and mill pond area. And you can see the railroad bridge lines up nicely and shows us where the pond would have been. And so if we adapt the landscape and sketch it up, we can see that the pond would have covered roughly this area. It would have flooded most of the valley with a floodplain residual bank growing over time in the middle. And coming around to another part of the valley, another perspective, we can see another photo, actually a range of photos were taken from on top of the bridge of the pond in the area, like this one that appears here, probably the 1880s, showing the flooded pond, St. Thomas in the background, the height of land, and the St. Thomas or the St. George Street Bridge. And that's the mill there again on the right-hand side. So I wanted to use that earlier photo, it's an 1865 photo, to use tools like Photo Match to take that photo, impose it on the landscape, and sketch a model of what the mill and the surrounding buildings would have looked like. We also know that there were giant stacks of flax straw in the yards of those mills, and that's what you see indicated here in these 6 large sort of barn-size stacks of material. So there it is again in the 1960, and we can zoom back out to see it from the St. Thomas or panorama view.